If you're seeing this, it's because the author just released a new chapter, and coincidentally, my mother was finally discharged today. Originally, I was only going to have the editor's help for as long as my mother was in the hospital, but I think I'll keep asking for their collaboration for this section for a while longer, at least until I finish the Elsa video. Regarding today's chapter, I was honestly very surprised by how Ram ended up defending Subaru even more, despite barely having any speaking time. It's not that I'm disappointed in Emilia, because at the end of the day, the novel makes it clear that whoever went was going to lose the debate regarding Natsuki Subaru's innocence. I'll cover that and other revelations in detail today. But as always, a big thanks to the new channel members. Thanks to Baymar, John, Tokyo, Thomas, Santi, to the Loliconero Lenmori, and finally to Ronaldo Galeano. I don't have any new members on the English channel, so those are all the shoutouts for today. Now then, let's get started. Welcome to the analysis of Arc 10, Chapter 17 of ReZero. The chapter begins with some interesting thoughts from Ram, who claims she isn't feeling her best physically, and reflects on how returning to the mansion might not have been the best idea. It's said she returned because she held a vague hope that her younger sister would regain her memories. But here comes something strange. In hindsight, it's quite suspicious that this current ailment of Ram's wasn't mentioned at any point in Arc 9. I was discussing these details with some friends, and none of them recall any mention of Ram's poor physical state during the Trader's arc. Honestly, this bothers me a bit because having it mentioned constantly now that she's unwell feels a bit odd, don't you think? I imagine that in the previous arc, Ram handled everything better not just because she got Rem back, but also because she might have received help from Felix's healing magic. On the way, the girls take to the interrogation room, which isn't the place we saw in episode 13 of the anime, but a different room. It's said that during that walk, Ram couldn't stop thinking that perhaps Crush really did do something desperate and Subaru protected her out of compassion. This part closes with her expressing her discomfort over how this side of Subaru might eventually end up bringing him trouble. I don't have much to say about this part, but I do have a lot to talk about regarding what happens right after. I'm talking about the interrogation scene. They arrive at the location escorted by Marcus, and the person presiding over the room is Bordeaux. While there are other members of the Council of Sages, they are simply randoms without significant backstories. So I believe that just as Miklotov was the unofficial previous leader of the old group, Bordeaux is now the leader of this new generation of old fogies. And this is exactly what makes things unfair for Emilia and Ram. You see, Bordeaux is someone who is racist toward non-humans. He's something like the Emperor from Warhammer or Garithos from Warcraft 3. I'm not saying racism is good, but you can understand the reasons that pushed Bordeaux to develop that perspective once you read the novels about his youth. So you have Bordeaux, an avowed racist, interrogating two young women who don't belong to the human race. On top of that, people associated with them just killed the person he respected most. Miklotov, it's safe to say the bald old man isn't going to be impartial this time. Upon arriving, Emilia is greeted by Filore, who, while it's true she shows herself to be very collaborative and expresses her total support for Emilia, I can't help but feel there's something negative about her. Believe it or not, I have something to back up my claim, but we'll get to that. It's said that Sakura was among the attendees, and she's the one in charge of moderating Filore, which in turn kills one of my theories that it was Sakura who tricked Otto in the previous episode, but apparently that wasn't the case. When the interrogation begins, Ram was very puzzled about where the source of the suspicion came from, since she doubted the Empire would have leaked that Subaru tried to protect the Archbishop of Gluttony. So, whatever gave Subaru away didn't come from the Empire's side. It must have come from someone else. While Emilia was presenting the points in Subaru's favor, Bordeaux was saying that those exact points were what made him suspicious in the first place. Then the elders proceed to list their reasons for thinking this. Reasons that, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you already know. And if you think about it, they have every reason in the world to be suspicious. But personally, I think there was one reason that I find very strange for them to know, and I feel this accusation was pushed by the same person behind all of this. I'm talking specifically about accusation number 5. This accusation holds that the members of the Council of Sages know that the archbishops get along poorly with each other. How the hell did they find out about that? In my view, Subaru was able to deduce that as a result of his talk with Capella when he went with Crush to fight her, but Subaru and Crush haven't shared that information with anyone. What's more, they haven't even had a chance to speak with the elders since then. I know someone might tell me that perhaps Anastasia deduced this based on her encounter with Sirius or Capella, but I don't think so. And even if she did deduce it, we must remember that we have a record of everything she did after Pristella, and at no point did she meet with the elders. What am I getting at with this? I like to think that this specific accusation is a clue from the author about the true person behind all this. According to my reasoning, that fifth accusation comes from Capella because she was the one who put forward this idea in the first place. Also, since we're talking about her, I think it's important to point out how the Archbishop has exactly the information necessary to get rid of each rival camp. Against the Amelia camp, she can use the suspicion of Subaru being a cult member. Against the Crush camp, she used the church. And later in this episode, we'll see she also has a weapon against Felt's faction. I know some might point out that Capella has nothing to take down Anastasia, but that could change. Surely some of you must remember, but I've already mentioned that Capella has tried in the past to get her hands on the spirit accompanying Anastasia. But what I haven't mentioned until now is that it seems at this very moment Capella has sent someone after Aridna. And it's this enemy who is making things difficult for Anastasia and her group in their side stories. I ask you to remember that I've said this is a possibility, and that's because it's very strange how what this enemy from Anna's story is seeking is precisely Aridna. And Aridna's presence is not public knowledge. Only Subaru, Al, Priscilla, and Capella know about it. Subaru and Al obviously haven't told Capella anything. Priscilla died without telling anyone. By process of elimination, the only person through whom this enemy could have found out was Capella. Where am I going with this? Now that Capella is busy getting rid of the candidates, her way of getting rid of Anna would be by exposing that she has a creation of the witch as an advisor. I would love to show you the excerpt from the story that narrates this, but I didn't save the document where I read it, or so I would say. But after an exhaustive search, I found the novel in question, and now I will narrate the excerpts that support part of what I'm saying. As I told you, what you are about to hear happens right after Anna is kidnapped and wakes up.
Under normal circumstances, shifting about while in the position of a kidnapped victim was an act that might have grated on an opponent's nerves, behaviour that, under any other scenario, she would have been strictly advised to avoid. However, Anastasia considered that on this occasion, such a rule did not apply for two fundamental reasons. The first reason lay in the fact that, despite being snatched, she had been neither killed nor bound. To her, it was obvious that every kidnapping pursues a purpose and a reason for keeping the target alive. Given that the opponent had gone to the trouble of whipping up a tornado to draw attention and execute the capture, it was hard to imagine they would recklessly harm her before that goal was fulfilled. The other reason was the existence of the missing Aridna, the spirit who had spent over 10 years by Anastasia's side, would not leave her unless something extremely grave had occurred. Furthermore, her mimicry as a fur scarf was masterful, a special ability that would hardly be discovered by a stranger. Therefore, the fact that Aridna had distanced herself and her whereabouts were unknown suggested a clear conclusion to Anastasia, leading her to deduce aloud that the true objective of this encounter was not herself, but the spirit.
I hope this excerpt convinced you. If not, well, maybe reading the novel itself will do the trick. But moving on with today's topic. Faced with these accusations, Amelia tries her best to defend her knight, but in my opinion, she didn't give the strongest argument. She maintains that Subaru simply has a knack for timing in matters unrelated to cult business, and that he isn't just good at those specific things. I feel like this was more of an emotional plea, and since Amelia didn't properly back up her words, it's no surprise they didn't believe her. Then Bordeaux dropped the bombshell. Subaru is strongly suspected of being the successor to the Archbishop of Sloth. Honestly, if I were Subaru, I'd feel frustrated, not just by the accusation, but because they're comparing me to the Archbishop with the least amount of aura in the entire cult. It would have hurt less if they'd said I was the successor to the former Archbishop of Pride, Stride. At least that guy actually had some aura. Something I found hilarious is that, according to Ram, Subaru has been going around saying he killed Sloth alongside Otto. This was news even to me, so it's no wonder Otto has that bloodthirsty reputation I showed in the excerpts from the last video. Then Bordeaux presents his case. They suspect the previous Archbishop was an evil spirit that has now possessed Subaru. In other words, they claim it wasn't her knight who achieved those feats, but the former Archbishop, and they're backing this up with Sirius's statements. And honestly, this smells fishy to me. Look, if Subaru had really been possessed by Betelgeuse, it would have been discovered by now because, as I've said in other videos, the body adapts to the soul. That is to say, the current appearance of Subaru's body wouldn't be his anymore, but Betelgeuse's. However, you could excuse this with the idea that knowledge about the soul was exclusive to Echidna and not known by the kingdom. But the reason it feels off to me is that if even Julius could detect a change in Subaru's spirit when he was actually possessed, I imagine any other spirit arts user would have been able to confirm the possession hypothesis. I mean, accusing Subaru of that is a very serious charge, and the least they could have done was confirm it before throwing such an accusation around. Or maybe they plan to do it once they catch him, who knows. Then comes a scene I have mixed feelings about. Ram momentarily loses control and gets emotional, defending Subaru with a logical question. Why do you trust and put your faith in Sirius? Unfortunately, Amelia shuts her down. I understand why she did it, because she knows that getting emotional won't help them. But I would have liked her to let Ram speak a bit more. Maybe something interesting would have happened if Ram hadn't been silenced. In a way, I like this scene of a mature Amelia because it shows how much she's grown. I don't like using this comparison, but between her and Ram, the half-elf has more of a right to act out given everything she's been through with Subaru, yet she still manages to keep her composure. When the discussion with Bordeaux resumes, the old man says something interesting that I feel many people overlooked. He says that initially, after hearing Sirius's statements, everyone on the council dismissed her words as nonsense. But Miklatov didn't see it that way. To clarify, it's not specified if Miklatov agreed from the start or came around later. This is left to interpretation. So since we don't have more information as of today, I'm assuming that Miklatov initially agreed that the idea of Subaru being the new archbishop was nonsense. But then he started showing disagreement. That sudden change of heart could be explained if Miklatov was replaced by someone, which would be why Crush ended up killing him once she realized the truth. I'll repeat it once more. The text does not specifically say that Miklatov changed his mind regarding his accusation of Subaru. This is just something I'm assuming based on the text you see on the screen. I have to clarify all this because I've been surprised to find some users in the community claiming I pass off my headcanons as canon, when in reality, I always clarify what I'm assuming and what the novel specifically said. But moving on, because of this track record against Subaru, Bordeaux assumes that during Subaru's visit to Miklatov today, Miklatov discovered some secret of his and was murdered for it. And with this heavy blow, Bordeaux verbally lashes out at the half-elf and presents the other accusations. Subaru uses something invisible just like the former Archbishop of Sloth. Subaru remembers people he shouldn't, and they add in how Subaru wasn't affected by the dragon's blood. The worst part is that the accusations weren't limited just to Subaru. They've also dropped hints that they now suspect Roswal. That reminds me, I wish Roswal had been present. He surely would have put up a better defense. To wrap up this section, something happened that I didn't like much at first, but the author ended up managing it in a way that made me love the moment. It said that when everyone expected Amelia to start crying in despair, she instead struck her pose from the second season, the one she learned from Subaru, and did it to reveal that she isn't afraid of the situation, declaring that she will clear all the accusations against them even if she has to start from scratch. At first, I felt like this was a bit unnecessary, but I really liked Ram's reflection on it, saying that if Amelia was capable of responding that way, it was because those experiences she lived through weren't fake. And so, this first part of the episode ended. Though before I forget, it's also mentioned that right then, news arrives that her faction members have escaped their house arrest. But that's not as important. What matters comes next. As they leave, they run into Felt, who consoles Amelia and reaffirms that she is in her and Subaru's debt. The most interesting bit comes from Filore, to whom Felt directs a few words regarding the rivalry they share due to the circumstances of not just the royal selection, but the alleged lineage. But here's the interesting part, or maybe it's just me seeing things where there are none. But do you remember how I told you at the start that Filore felt suspicious to me? Well, I said it because of this scene. It's said that throughout the entire time, Amelia avoided hugging Felt because she felt the knights would think she was taking her hostage. But as soon as Filore hugs her, the mature Amelia mentions that she can't help her emotions overflowing and gives in to the urge to hug her back. This act of Amelia yielding to what Filore wanted is highlighted by the text, and that's what I find suspicious. In the game The Prophecy of the Throne, it was said that those affected by Melty's power would unconsciously yield to her demands due to brainwashing. Regardless, maybe I'm just going senile and Filore is genuinely worried about Amelia, and I'm just confusing things. But as I always tell you, the point of these videos is to speculate based on concrete details about what could happen. After this, Felt announces that while she'd like to lend them Reinhard, she can't right now because he was summoned to another part of the castle. And she also came to give a statement for a matter that hasn't been revealed. Unfortunately, it seems things aren't looking good for Felt either, and that's because of something we'll see in the next section of the episode. It's said that in another room of the castle, Reinhard was talking to an unknown person, someone for whom there isn't even a physical description. So, not even I have an idea who it could be, but it is known that they are a direct messenger from the Council of Sages. This messenger orders Reinhard to go after the Amelia group that escaped, and in the face of the knight's slight hesitation, the messenger coerces him using the name Valga Cromwell. You likely already know who Valga is. and I don't want to waste time explaining his lore and importance. But if you don't know him, I invite you to check out my shorts regarding Felt to understand the reference. Honestly, it doesn't surprise me that the Council of Sages knows Rom's true identity. Let's remember that the Council is made up of people like Bordeaux, who in the past faced off against Rom many times, and when the giant was imprisoned, we know Miklotov had many talks with him. It's not far-fetched to believe that Miklotov shared this information with Bordeaux, or that Bordeaux obtained it through his position. And it's because he knows this information that he's coercing Reinhard. Truthfully, as strange as it sounds, I liked that they coerced Reinhard this way. And the worst part is, we know that if Felt were coerced the same way, she would give in. How do we know this? We know because in the light novel version of The Greed F, Subaru managed to make Felt drop out of the royal selection with that exact same threat, and it went down just like that.
In the middle of the night, a strange presence in her bedroom woke Felt, who shuddered upon feeling that someone had violated her privacy. Her first thought was one of deep disappointment in herself for having let her guard down. After 15 years of surviving in the slums, where every person was a potential enemy, and danger lurked around every corner, her ability to stay alert, even in her sleep, had always been her greatest pride. An unfamiliar voice broke into her self-reflection, ironically apologizing for the complications and the dilemma it was presenting to her, though assuming she wasn't losing any sleep over it. Without beating around the bush, the intruder ordered her to leave the kingdom along with Old Man Rom, assuring her that only by doing so would her safety be guaranteed. Still lying down, Felt replied with a low-voiced threat, questioning the individual's identity and warning him about the severity of picking a fight with someone like her. Despite the humiliating situation of being caught off guard in her own bed, she flatly refused to show weakness or lower herself before this stranger. When the intruder tried to mention Reinhard, she interrupted him curtly and with contempt, refusing to let the knight's name be brought up in a situation where she was the one who had failed, and therefore the one responsible for handling her own business. Felt mentally prepared herself to lunge at the man's throat the moment she saw an opening, but her determination was clouded by the intruder's strange reaction. Standing beside the bed, the man began to chuckle. At Felt's demand to know what was so funny, he asked her to lower her voice and remarked, in a somewhat distracted tone, that it was very much like her not to call for Reinhard in a moment like this. Turning toward him with a frown, Felt noticed that the initial aggression in the air had vanished. She no longer felt like he would attack her if she made a sudden move. Her intuition told her she wouldn't regret turning her back on him. It was then that she recognized the familiar face of the black-haired boy and asked him, calling him Big Brother, what on earth he was doing infiltrating that place. The young man shrugged and questioned if she was still half asleep for not having caught his earlier demand about leaving with Old Man Rom. Felt noticed that the boy was completely unarmed. He carried no weapons nor seemed prepared to hold her by force. As she slowly sat up, she felt stupid for having been so cautious and scratched her blonde hair in annoyance. She asked him how he had managed to get in. For even though Reinhard was away that night, the mansion was staffed with fearsome guards. The black-haired boy admitted that the twins in charge of security, Flam and Grassy, had given him some trouble despite their appearance, and mentioned knowing the three thugs felt protected as well, calmly pointing out how small the world was. Hearing the names of the people who should have been guarding the place, felt a cold sweat run down her back and gritted her teeth, realizing that her guard had been utterly bypassed by someone who, in appearance, was still the same boy as always. The intruder assured her that he wasn't someone looking for revenge for having been hit, and that she shouldn't worry about the other's condition. Faced with Felt's suspicion that he would do the same to her as he did to the guards if she screamed, he nodded, asking her to stay quiet. In exchange, he made a grim promise. He would keep her family's secret private. Leaning toward her, he whispered in her ear that he knew a lot about Old Man Rom and about her as well, admitting with an ironic smile that saying something like that made him sound like a stalker. The young man warned her that Old Man Rom was considered an enemy of the kingdom and that if his identity were to come to light, he would undoubtedly be arrested and executed, which would also implicate Felt and all the members of her camp. Seeing the girl's confusion, he admitted that his proposal might seem despicable, but he showed himself fully prepared to make her cave. Felt understood the crossroads. If she called Reinhard for help, the dangerous information would circulate immediately, destroying her family. After a long and heavy silence, Felt agreed to comply with what he asked. The boy showed a sudden relief and pulled a meticulously prepared bag from under the bed, assuring her that he had already spoken with Rom and that he had several escape routes ready. Felt, overwhelmed by the level of planning and the fact that everything had been studied to such an extreme, took the bag and prepared to leave. Before leaving the room, Felt stopped to throw one last remark at him, clarifying that she didn't want to seem like a sore loser, but that the boy's face at that moment looked to her like that of the devil himself. Without waiting to see his reaction, the blonde candidate quickly left the room. She saw no possibility of victory against such an adversary. Now that he had become her enemy, even Reinhard's protection didn't seem like enough. Overcome by a fear that chilled her to the bone, Felt withdrew from the royal selection.
As we can see, that threat of revealing Rom's secret is effective not only against Reinhard, but also against Felt. So she's also screwed by whoever is pulling the strings from behind. But that's been all for today. I hope you liked this, and remember to leave me your impressions. After all, every interaction helps YouTube recommend my channel. See ya!